Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. We have a simple project today. We're not putting any zips in this bag at all, and it's just a very simple shopping tote. Much like others I've made before, this one does have a little bit of extra strength with the top stitching done on the sides, so it gives it a more of a boxy look. And then we also have the top stitching done on the bottom as well. Also fully lined, and as I said, there are no zips to be seen. Let's get straight to it, shall we? Okay, we don't need much for this project. For the handles, I'm going to be using a webbing, which is what I use on almost all of my bags. If you don't have access to that, then just grab yourself a 4-inch wide strip of fabric and you can fold that together so that you can make your handles out of the same fabric. But I'll be using the webbing, and I have one piece of fabric for the outer bag and I have another piece of fabric for the lining. I'm using one piece of fabric here, and you would want to use something that's non-directional. This actually is, but I can get away with it. This print will be upside down on the other side of the bag. It's not going to bother me for this particular project. But if you do have an obvious directional fabric, just cut yourself 2 pieces of fabric half the length of what you've got in the pattern here. You'll want to do the same for the lining as well, so that you end up with the same size pieces of fabric. Other than that, the process of making this bag is exactly the same either way. Now we can get started. Let's take our lining fabric, and you've got one continuous length. We'll fold that in half. I've got the folded edge over this end and the raw edges at the top here. From the fold at the bottom, we're going to measure 2.5 inches or 6.5 centimeters. And then I will mark a line going all the way across, and then gently flip this over, and again on the fold we're going to measure up 2.5 inches or 6.5 centimeters and mark a line going all the way across. If you're using a patterned fabric, you want to be marking this on the pattern, not on the plain side. Grab your outer fabric and we're going to do the same. So we'll have the right sides facing out, folded edge along the left side here, and I'll also measure 2.5 inches or 6.5 centimeters going across. We'll flip that one over as well. With those lines marked, we're going to fold the fabric on that marked line, and you can clip the edges together whilst you're preparing everything. But what you want to do is fold each side and each piece. So that's one side done. Flip the fabric back over, and this marked line that we did on this side, we'll fold that as well. And we can do the same for the lining. I'm going to go and get my ironing pad, and rather than clipping everything together, I'm just going to fold along those markings and then press it. So I'll fold along this line here. I'll press that fold. I'm using a Teflon sheet because this fabric that I'm using for the lining isn't cotton. And then what we can do is grab the other fold. We'll fold this line and bring that down to the one we've just pressed. So that is the 2 bottom edges folded and pressed, and we've got that little fold on the inside. Set that aside, grab your outer fabric. We don't need these clips, that was really just to show you what I was doing. We'll press this edge as well. and this one too. I'm only going to be pressing the bottom folds. I'm not pressing the fold that's in the centre. Not that that matters. Okay, so we have the bottom edge of our bag nicely pressed. We can take both of these pieces of fabric to the machine, and we're going to sew each fold individually, and it'll just be a narrow top stitch all the way along, probably about 1/8 of an inch in from the outside edge, or about 3 millimeters. That's one side. I'll do the other. And we can do the lining. Okay, we've got both edges top stitched along the bottom here. The next thing we're going to do, from the wrong side, we're going to line up these two stitched edges. It'll seem a little bit awkward because of the folds. You can press this if you prefer, but it's really not necessary. Grab this seam here, pinch that together on the end, and then we'll do the same with this one. And if it's easier for you, you can just clip those edges together on that stitched line. You can do the same here. So these two clipped edges need to come together. All you'll do is place those right beside each other, clip that together. We can do the same on this side. This is sometimes hard to try and figure out when you see people make this bag really quickly. This section here doesn't matter. This will be the base of our bag later. So once you've clipped those edges together at the bottom and you've got those two seams lined up, bring the outer fabric pieces together and you can line up the side edges, and they're ready to be stitched. So all we'll do is sew straight down both edges. I'll set that aside, and for the lining we're going to do the same. So we've got our stitched edges on the outside here. We'll turn this around so that it's the wrong way up. Grab this edge here and this one, and we can bring those together. And repeat for this side. And bring the fabric together. If we had a printed piece, this would be the pattern facing and the wrong side to the outside. Then you can line up those edges and we can sew up these seams as well. I'm going to leave an opening on one side. I'll stitch from the bottom up to about here with a back stitch, leave an opening, continue on along there, and then we'll sew that side down as well. Just make sure that you've got the folded edges at the bottom lined up on the side edge there, so you'll catch it with the stitching. And I will use a 1 centimetre seam allowance, which is about 3/8 of an inch. Back stitch and sew to the end. We can flip that over and double check that you've got that fold right on the edge. And we'll repeat for the lining. On this side I'm going to leave an opening. Okay, those side edges have been stitched. Because this fabric frays so much, I've gone ahead and overlocked the edges or serged them. Let's turn this the right way out. Let's line up the top stitched edges along the bottom, and this boxed triangle here will sit nicely just on an angle like that. We've got our side seam running along the side there, and what we're going to do, where the bottom edge turns, we're going to fold the fabric right along there. And on the other side you'll do the same. If you open this out, you've got the straight edge of the bottom of your bag that comes into a point along the center. Line that up, and then this side, and you should have even sides. So what you'll have here is the side edge lined up with the bottom, and then it comes straight up along the side, same along here and straight up. We'll give all of this a press, so we're going to do that on this side, the other side, and also on the lining. And again, we didn't need the clips, that was really just to show you what to do. Line up those folded edges together and give that a good press. Flip it over and do the other side as well. It'll make it much easier for you to stitch this when you've got it nicely ironed. So that looks good there. And on the other side we'll do the same. Line up that bottom edge and then line up this edge of the fabric in line with the bottom. Fold both of those edges in so that they are nice and even. So those edges are nicely pressed. We will take this back to the machine and we're going to top stitch all those folded edges. We'll do the same for our lining. We'll turn this the right way out. Bring the bottom edges together. Neaten that up. And where you go from straight to diagonal, we'll fold right along there. And do the same on the other side. Press that again. And this side as well. Before I stitch up these sides, I do just want to double check that my bag pieces are going to be the same size, and if I haven't folded things properly, you can see here my lining is quite a bit larger than the outer fabric. We don't want that because it's going to cause the fabric to be too loose on the inside. So I will adjust that, and the easiest way to do that is to depress that fabric where that center seam is. I'm just going to actually bring that in a little bit more, and I'll just double check my outer fabric to make sure that that's all the same size. When you're happy with that, you can go and press it. It's really only important to make sure the top edge is lined up. The rest of it's going to sit inside the bag anyway. So I'll just set that crease again. and I'm happy with that. Let's sew up those sides. So once again, we're top stitching those folds individually. And finish up at the end where you meet the top stitching at the bottom. We're going to do the same for all 4 sides of the outer fabric and the lining. Okay, we are done with our sides. We need to put some handles on, and I've cut 2 pieces of webbing that are 20 inches in length, which is about 50 centimetres. And as I said earlier, if you wanted to make your own handles, you would get a length of fabric which is 10 centimetres wide or 4 inches. Fold the fabric in half and then bring the raw edges into the centre and then fold that fabric up again, and you would stitch down both long edges. This is just a scrap piece of fabric. And then you would cut your handles into 2 equal pieces. We've got the folded edges along the side here. From the top stitched edges, we're going to measure 2.5 inches or 6.5 centimetres, which is the same measurement that we did for our corners and our folds. Clip that together, keeping your handle nice and straight or flat. Place the other side the same distance from the outside edge, and that's just been clipped to one side of the bag. And then you can grab the other handle and place that in the same place on the opposite side. So as long as they line up, that will be good. I'm going to take this to the machine quickly and just stitch those handles in place. I'll just use 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I will triple stitch over each one. Okay, those handles are very well secured to the fabric. It looks like the top edge is going to fray as well, but I will probably overlock those edges once I've put the lining and the fabric together. So we've got our bag right side out. Grab your lining, turn that inside out, and hopefully you've remembered to leave an opening in the side. And we're going to place the outer fabric inside the lining and line up the side seam. I had almost thought that I had this inside out again. So we want to line up the side seams first, and I will have my seams going in opposite directions. Find the one on this side. So we want the side seam, not the top stitched seam. Then you can line up your top stitching. And then we can line up the rest of the bag. Okay, that's all clipped together. I'm going to take this to the machine now, and with a 1 centimetre hem allowance or seam allowance, I'm going to sew all the way around the top. Because this fabric frays so much, after I've done that, I'm going to take it to the overlocker or serger and just neaten up all of those edges. It's not something I usually do on my bags unless it's likely to continue to fray. So it's a bit of a struggle to get to the overlocker now because Fatso down here has decided to take up my space. I think I need to find another place to put her mat. Good thing I have another overlocker. Okay, those edges have been done. I'd hate to have had to move Coco. She's so comfortable down there. Find your opening. And bring the bag through. And before we do the top stitching, we can close up our bag. Where's the opening? So find your opening along here, and all you need to do is pinch those edges together and just do a small top stitch along here. I will go and do that now. Alright, that's been closed up there. Let's put the outer bag inside the lining, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to be top stitching shortly. I like to top stitch with the outer fabric faced up, so we can line up all of these edges so that the lining is on one side and your outer fabric is on the other, and it's nice and even along the top. And you don't have to go and clip the edges together. You can just take it straight to the machine and sew those edges. I do actually enjoy clipping the edges together and making sure it looks nice and neat before I sew it. Okay, the last thing we need to do now is top stitch all the way around that top edge. I like to start by top stitching from the side seam. I'm just going to be doing about 1/8 of an inch again. Okay, we're done. Let's have a look at the bag. So there's not much to it really, is there? We've got our nice base at the bottom. If you wanted to make something a little bit more solid for the bottom, then before you actually close up the lining, you can cut a piece of card or plastic, or even one of those plastic cutting mats, and cut that to size to fit inside here. That'll give you a little bit of extra support. We've got the top stitching along the side edges, and lots of room on the inside of the bag. You can go and put a couple of pockets on the inside if you like, and you could even put a pocket on the outside and make this one of those type that you can fold up and pack away. Well, what did you think? It was nice and easy, wasn't it? There's just a little bit of folding, ironing, and a lot of top stitching in this bag. We've got those weird box corners at the bottom there. I don't know whether I like them, but they do make the job really quick. I think as somebody that likes to sew, I like to have things finished properly. Most customers tend not to look at things like that. It's just another design feature really, and that's all it is. It's just a really simple design feature. So that was a nice easy project. And as I mentioned before, you could easily go and put a few pockets in here, even a holder for drink bottles and things like that. But I've decided just to keep this very simple for today. I needed a quick project to do. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.